but I'll try and simplify everything, and hopefully we'll avoid some of those. But we'll go into here. You've installed this. We're going to quickly reference what we need to do to set this up. When you come in, if you're using a stock and you haven't done all this, go right-click your chart and go configure. You want default global trend line and auto load save global trend lines. I recommend those. You don't have to have them, but I recommend having those. Save trend line as well. Now, this is the big daddy that makes this work. So double click to trade. That means when you double click on the chart, it's going to populate wherever you clicked. That price is going to fire into this montage as the connected montage's price. That's what we're going to be using for our double click function. So now that that's referenced, we'll cancel, we'll close that. You're going to hear when we do some examples, since the market is open, you're going to hear a text to speech. My text to speech, I have configured to yell out whenever something gets filled. The reason why is because I may be working on two trades and I want to know when a different symbol gets filled. That's just how I have it set up. So you may hear a guy talk. That's why. And I could turn it off, but it's very, I don't know if there's a bug in DAS or not, but it's very finicky on whether or not it's going to come back if I turn it off. So I usually left it on. Hopefully it doesn't annoy anybody, but we'll just, again, keep that in mind. Because my charts have a lot of stuff on them. So I'll quickly go through what my setup is. Again, you don't have to listen to, but my setup is essentially I use on the 1 minute, 2 minute, 5 minute, 15 minute, and 1 day. I have moving average exponential at 9, 20, simple at 50, simple at 100. 100, that's not default for most bearable traders, but on the 1 minute, I find that a lot of times it will bounce off that. But then I also have this gray one here, so it's very faint, and you'll notice it if we zoom in, you see it right there. It's a 13 exponential. I don't ever trade off that. I use that as basically a calculation of my distance so if I wanted to get in at the 9, I would probably go down. If the 13 is below it, I'd probably go down to around the 13 and go, just so that way it's more likely going to hit that. It's just a quick reference point. You'll notice that you have these lines. If I zoom in here, you have these faint green lines and faint red lines. These are a little trick to get a higher low, higher high indicator in DAS because it doesn't come default. So if you look at this portion, you can quickly visualize, okay, this is higher high, higher high, higher high, higher low, sorry. Or this one is basically changing direction, higher or lower high, higher low. That's just a quick way that all that is essentially simple at one moving averages, draw the slope with a very faint color, and use a 1 period, use the high value. The other one would use the low value. And that's all that is. Very simple. This one would be the low one. This is a good reference point. My volume has these are actually scaled to kind of match each other, but this is the long-term directional change in volume, and this is short term. So this is probably like 3 minutes worth, 2 or 3 minutes. And then down here, I probably have this set to 4 minutes, and then this is the 5 minutes. It just gives you a quick idea of what it's doing and how it's changing direction. That's all that is. Let's see, is that it? I think that's all we have set. And we will, at the end of this, go over some tricks on how to do some things that most people want to do in DAS, but they may not know how. So now we're back to the AMD trade here. Say we're in AMD, and we think, okay, it's coming up. It hit here. It held here pretty good. So we're going to double click here. You'll see that this price got populated with where we clicked. If I was to now hit my hotkey for, we'll say, an $80 risk short position, since this is not on SSR, we're going to use the normal one. It's going to fire it. So now we're in here, right here. Now I usually I have a gaming mouse, which gives me all kinds of extra buttons. So I usually like to draw a box just so I get a reference point of when I take a screenshot later on. And so I can see where it's at. That now is down here. So 666 shares. That's not a good omen. Then we go here. That's where we clicked, plus our offset. So that's basically our stop distance right here, and that's what's been factored. Now I do have a tool we'll go over in a second, which will actually test this in a second here. Let me see. Actually, I could probably just fire it up right now. Close that. And we'll test this math real quick without having to actually do it in our head. So, gonna launch my program. This is something I'm eventually going to release. This is a very old prototype, so that the improved version will eventually be released to the community. It plugs into DAS in various ways. Uh, but essentially, all right, that was just a bug. We had to fix real quick just so we don't have to manually math this. So you may notice in DAS that our values changed down here. It's because I had to re-enter in my sim just so we can do this real quick. So we'll just check the math. So 400 shares at a stop distance of 66 cents to 86. That's 20 cents. So 20-cent stop distance. 400 shares should equal $80 risk. Let's find out. Magical button. Factors it. And we have this. So 33.66 is our entry price. 86. Ignore this. It's not live because I didn't plug it into the API yet. Ignore the target price. That's based on 1R. Position size is this. Quantity is 400. And stop distance is 20. Target distance, blah, blah, blah. Our risk is $80. That's what it calculated at. So if we want to check this math extra good, let's go ahead and go back to here. And we will say we cover 25%. So, all right. Now, when you scale out of anything, and this is another thing we're talking about, if you're using a physical stop order, keep this in mind. What I do, the way I use this, and you'll see this in a detailed example where it's me basically trading, and then I'll voice over and tell you what exactly I'm doing. Double click this, that'll fire it back up to this montage. A side note, if you created it in this montage, the order came down here. When you double click it, it's going to this montage. It doesn't tie to the montage. I'm not sure, again, if that's a bug or just something they didn't quite think that would happen or occur. You know, a lot of these times, use cases, when you develop software, you don't think of all the use cases until a user gets to you and says, hey, it's more intuitive that does this. So keep that in mind. When you double click, it goes to this. So say you want to update this, double click that. I usually just position, replace. It's now replaced. So now if this hits, we're not going to flip our position and end up in a, oh crap, and scramble. Let's do it a different example. It doesn't have a nice round number. So say you're done with this, you decide to dump the all position. Remember, when you want to use our hotkeys, you always click the montage. And we'll go over a few potential issues. Since we're short, we want to use our cover. And I use a Stream Deck because it makes this really easy. You can see what I'm actually seeing on my Stream Deck. Real simple. This is the XL version. I recommend that because it's got a lot of buttons. And I have these icons, new icons that I'll release. Some of them are new. Now, if you're using the stop break-even icon, I could do that, but it would actually get us out because we're right at our break-even point. So I won't even bother. So say we want to bail out anyway. Now we're out. So let's see if we can find something long, just to do a long example. Okay, MU, we'll just say, oh, we like this. And we're going to pull back to here. Okay, we'll do double click here, hit our full, which is our $80 risk button for my setup. Since this is so close, that's a huge, it's only like 5 cents. We have a lot of shares that we could buy. Let's see what we calculated out since that's a good number. Ah, there we go. Again, prototypes, they're buggy. That's our position size, and our risk is $79.94. That's if everything went perfectly. You're not going to usually have that. Our stop distance was 7 cents, and these are just levels that we would have. Essentially, if we were to say, oh, 2R is going to be at 42.81, R3 is going to be at 42.88. These values, will eventually in the version, these will change based on what it is. So you set this, say, okay, if it's not within a certain range of the ATR, it's a risky trade, and they'll basically hire, like, this is a 1-to-1. If we don't change, if we set a price target, this would change to what our actual risk to reward ratio is, and it would change color because 1-to-1 is flagged as being bad. 2-to-1, like Andrew recommends, is flagged as being green. So anything close to 2-to-1 or above it would be a green color. Anything within a slight distance would be a yellow. Again, this is an older version. Eventually, when I release this and I have time, it'll all function more appropriately and more reliably. But that's our calculation values. You saw that, blah, blah. Okay, so now we're long here. Oh, no, it basically came back down. It's going to run our stop at 42.60. Well, maybe it'll actually do it for us. So we can see that in action. Come on. Tank. You can do it. You can do it. It's not going to do it. So, but we use our hotkey. Bam, we're out. That's the examples of those. What else do we have for hotkeys that we can go over real quick? Oh, the Y margin. So I have hotkeys for zooming. So Y margin is essentially the scale of this. It is this portion right here. I have mine set to 43%. It's the portion up and down here. Default is 3%. So we'll just show you that real quick. So 3% is like this. So that means your margin, you're ending here to what fits in the chart as you zoom in, 3%. That's just, I don't know. I don't like it that close to the edge. I like to be able to see what's coming up, see the levels. So let's just say we want to zoom in to 198%. Oh, that's a long. That's got to really crunch it down. But quickly, to do it quickly, you can see what levels are up here, what levels are here, what's coming up. I have my Stream Deck set with a super macro plugin, which allows you to hold a button to do a different action. So mine is to hold that button, it resets. And again, you can have different values, 20% increases, hold to reset. Just worth noting so that way you can quickly say you want to see what's coming up. You're in this position, boom, boom, boom. Okay, I got levels up here. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, and now I want to go back to my normal scale. There's that. What else do we have that we can go over? I think that was it. The stop break evens, those are ones that you're going to want to play with in Simulator, see what works. They're usually self-explanatory. They're just going to set your price to break even. Make sure you selected the montage to do that. Like I said, always double click. If you have a specific question or something not working, same with the same price target, it's just going to set an order up for you. The price target hotkey. So say, let's take this trade here. Say we're long here and we're looking to go here. I would probably draw a box. Oops. Around where I'm looking to go on my chart, just so I can reference it at a later point. And I know, okay, this is my stop. My entry is a little arrow that I just encapsulated, and my price target is up here. Now, you could repurpose the Fibonacci line. If you do trend lines, if you don't happen to use the Fibonacci line, you can do this. Fibonacci line, we'll just draw one real quick. We'll go configure. Now I set mine up slightly different. We'll go that. That's not the configure for that. Config. You can now go above 100% with these. So I have 100%, which would be my entry point. 0%, you have to go 0.001 for it to draw a line, just because it won't draw a line otherwise. So I have that as my stop. And I'll show you how to use this in a second. 200% is R1 from my entry. 300% is R2 from my entry. I wish you could put labels on these. R4 or R3, R4. So the way I use it is I actually have a macro set up on my gaming mouse. If someone has a Logitech gaming mouse using the G Hub software, I can share this macro with you. But essentially, when I enter a position, I have that. I go down here. If my stop, say, is down here, I'd click that, draw that up, and now I know, okay, quickly reference, R1 has come up at 4272, R2 is above that, and then I let go and it goes away. That way it doesn't clog up my chart with all these different Fibonacci lines. It makes it really nice. Otherwise, you can just delete it after you've created it if you're using just a standard version. A few other tips. We'll just go over some quick tips and dashes before we move on. If we've talked about in a lot of the classes, the known intent to fill. You look for the large bid, large ask to get an idea, and then you get these guys that have like 250 and it's sitting way down here and it's whatever. I found that it's usually the Chicago Exchange, and that seems to be like a homeless guy at a Sotheby's auction just yelling out randomly high bids that he has no intent to ever pay for. So what I do is I go level 2 config, hide market maker, CHX. That takes away most of the no intent to fill guys. They're gone, bye-bye. Another tip is if you wanted to have a ladder view and this view, you can. You just can't do it natively. You have to use a macro hotkey, and this is another thing I can share if someone wants it. Essentially, I have another montage over here that's not linked to anything, so they say it's different stock. But I have a hotkey in my Stream Deck that if I hit this and I say I want to extend this out, boom, now I got a ladder view, and I also have the full book view here. So now I can reference this. Now this is good because you can kind of get an idea of the imbalance just off a quick glance. So both these play a role, and I use both these usually when I'm in a trade. So that way you could see what the imbalance is, and you can get a reference of what's coming up if you have a level on here that you want to check what any shares are sitting around there. you get more view, and then just drop those back behind everything. And now we'll just go over, oh yes, yes, yes. We've all done this before. And you've come in here, you've set up your hotkeys. These are the ones you want to watch. You've ordered them in the way you want to do it in the morning, and then you accidentally hit that. You're like, 9999. Well, don't worry. You can just, if you didn't know this, right-click user defined list, and you're back in action. Keep that in mind. Now, say you have these different montages over here, blah, blah. I have two montages active, and then I have chart windows elsewhere. And you want to copy these values there. Just remember, you just click, drag, Control C on the keyboard. That's copy. Go over here, click, drag, Control V on the keyboard. Boom. You're now copied and paste. Where did I copy? Yeah, so this is actually zoomed down. There you go. And now you have them over here. And in the morning, when you get out here and you create new rows, the insert button on the keyboard doesn't insert a new row. I wish it did, but until that gets added, we'll go right-click, delete. So say we delete everything in our list in the morning. You go import, and I have a blank reset, which I can share. Boom, gives me a bunch of blank columns. Don't have to worry about fiddling around with everything. Just makes it simple as can be. Those are just ways, and you can actually macro this if you wanted to distribute this list to all your montages. You can macro that using the focus window hotkey in DAS, and you just have to work in a macro with the copy and the paste, but that's something you can do. The one tip I have is, a lot of people stay away from high price stocks because you see the spread, you're used to like a 5 cent or lower spread. I usually won't take a trade that's above a 5 cent spread just as my risk control. So like this, you see that 67, 80, that's a 13-cent spread. One mind trick I do is if you divide by 10, which just means you're just moving the decimal place over, that becomes a 23.76 and 23.77, which is a 1 cent spread equivalent. If this was a $23 stock, you take your ATR. If you want to check your ATR range, you move the decimal over, and that would become 74 cents on, you go opposite, 74 cents on the ATR. So then you basically calculate off that. It's a quick way to realize whether or not, because these high price stocks, a 50-cent spread may not be uncommon because their ATR is going to be like 10 bucks. Whereas like at MU, which is a $40 stock, a 2-cent spread may not be uncommon because they're like a $1.50 ATR. So that's just one little mind trick I use, and it works good for me. I have the same result with $300 stocks as I do with $40 stocks. It allows me to trade both pretty much equally and not have to change things up. The only difference is when you use your hotkeys, it's going to be a lot lower share price, so you just have to keep that in mind. This right here is something from William, essentially. It's one of the tricks he uses. He uses a second time in sales window attached to the montage, and he uses a filter on this. Show only sells with a quantity greater than 5,000 shares. I've put in a request for a new filter to do this by dollar amount, so cash flow. So essentially, this value times the lot value in shares to give us that. So that way it scales with the different stocks. So Tesla, you can use it with Tesla because 5,000 shares on Tesla is a massive position, whereas 5,000 shares on a $2 stock is, that's not a very big position at all. It's like 10,000. So it'll allow it to scale. I think they're going to work on that and put that in as a filter, hopefully, in an upcoming version. So what else? What else? I got my notes off to the side here because I don't have a cue card person. Okay, we'll go over some risks with the hotkeys and some notes and to close this out, and then I will edit in an example of me using it with a voice dub and probably some nice country music or something. I don't know. So when you enter and you have a stop, you'll notice, say, let's enter this, double click here, enter full $80 risk, yada, yada, yada. So now I know this is my risk, 42.58, where I click plus my offset. I have this. Now you notice I have no arrow. Like, where's my stop position arrow? That's usually with a stop. The reason for that is if you're using a stop market, it uses the price. You can't set a price with a stop market. I'm not sure why that is. So the arrow is actually down here, down this chart at 0, sitting down there, chilling on the bottom. So it's not there. So keep that in mind. You won't have your arrow show up of where you put that stop order in. Another thing I've requested is that, besides that fix, is that these arrows can be locked to your sidebar so that they will move with the chart. So you don't have to worry about having your arrow float back here on a long trade. You just have it up to the close edge there. So say you're looking to go short here. Oh yeah, let's go short. You double click here, you set up, and then you have a brain aneurysm or whatever, and you hit long hotkey. Well, you just see it flash down here. The share size was like 1 or 2. That is essentially the math not equaling out. So our share size was 1 before it filled the stop. The stop order got ran if you're using a stop trigger. Essentially, the math did not equal out correctly, and your share size is very low. So it's kind of like a protection mechanism for having a hotkey error. Uh, don't rely on that. Always try to hit the right hotkeys. That's a general rule of thumb if you're using a Stream Deck or just doing hotkeys in general. When you're using these, keep in mind that the closer your stop distance, and this goes with trading in general, but the higher risk of slippage. So if I was looking to go long here, and I put this at 63, essentially 64 cents right there. Say I put it right there. That's a 3-cent drop. So if it was to come down and run, that by the time that gets triggered, it could have dropped another 2 or 3 cents. So it could have taken your $80 risk to a $160 risk. So keep that in mind. If you're going to go with a really tight stop, you might want to use a half size or just bring it out a little bit. Just bring it down here. Maybe you'll manually fill it if it breaks that, but try not to do a really tight stop because the tighter it is, the more likely you're going to get slipped out and you're going to be crushed on a dollar risk that you didn't think was possible. But by the time your stop fired and it got filled, it slipped some more. So especially a stock that's tanking. If you're trading multiple symbols and say you have 2 trades open at once, Andrew does this, or his brain can work on 3 different trades at once and somehow flip between the 2. If you happen to be doing that, keep in mind that this montage, this value is not tied to this symbol. So if my stop price is 42.70 and I flip to a different stock that's 23 something and get into that, it'll replace the stop price there. So then when I come back to MU, a lot of my calculations are going to be based off that other stop value. So keep in mind, always when you are in a trade, if you're using physical stops, the reason why I use physical stops is because of this benefit. You can just double click your stop for that and it'll load into your montage, and that stop location will load right here. So that way it's kind of like saving it in a way. So you have that. If you happen to be, another thing that I had happen to me once in the last year, so keep this in mind. If you use a tight, as I showed, I use 43%, but if you happen to use 3%, you're more susceptible to this. As this chart moves, you'll see it scale, you'll see it, see right here. So say you get in and you just happen to double click right when a new bar comes, which just happens to move the shift. So you're about to double click. As you double click, a new bar comes and now just moved it and your stop's in a different spot. I've had that happen where it's actually a larger jump. So be aware of that. That you may have to adjust for that in some situations. It's very rare, but I keep an eye on the clock. All of the major things to do with these hotkeys, I'm sure I'll get some questions, but hopefully you know how to set these up. We'll go over a quick example on how to input these. So say you created your settings, you came over here, you created your settings in Excel, you came over here, you're like, okay, I want to do $100 risk, long, go copy. We'll go over into our DAS and we go tools, setup, hotkey, and then we want to add new hotkey. Click here, Control V, that pastes it. Type our name. We'll just do temp. We type user hotkey, hit commit, and you're good to go on that. Same thing, just keep repeating that, and you're set. All right, I think that's it. If you have questions about anything you see or whatever, I'll do another video after this that goes over what my modifications in DAS are. and what it allows me to do. These are some features that I've used basically this as a platform for prototyping that I can then send the developers a video and say, hey, look, can you natively add this feature so that other people can use it, not just me? I'll do another video that's probably uploaded after this. And that is it. Hopefully good trades. The market's got another half hour. I'm sure William's probably doing his trade reviews right now, so go tune into that. I guess you can't because by the time this is uploaded, that's over with. So good luck. Have fun. Happy trading. Any questions, post it in the forum. I'll try to be more responsive. It's been a very busy year with projects. And that is it. Goodbye.